In the Warhammer 40,000 universe, the galaxy is an immense, ancient arena of unending conflict. It is a place where every star system holds the scars of countless wars, and the void between worlds is haunted by eldritch forces and restless spirits. At its heart lies an overarching truth. Nothing in this galaxy endures unchanged, and all things are subject to decay, destruction, and renewal. The Milky Way is not just a collection of stars and planets. It is a living entity shaped by the ceaseless ambitions, ideologies, and survival instincts of its inhabitants. From the ashes of the Old One's mysterious dominion to the cataclysmic fall of the Eldar, from the rise of the Imperium of Man to the insidious schemes of chaos, the galaxy has been defined by cycles of creation and annihilation. This unyielding turmoil leaves one question echoing through the ages. How will it all end? To explore the galaxy's potential fate, one must understand the cosmic forces at play. These forces are not confined to the mortal realm. They encompass the immaterium, a dimension of pure emotion and psychic energy where the ruinous powers thrive. They include ancient technologies capable of erasing civilizations in an instant, and species whose goals extend beyond mere survival, aspiring instead to reshape reality itself. History has shown that endings in this universe are rarely straightforward. They are marked by tragedy, betrayal, and the unintended consequences of desperate acts. The galaxy's past offers countless examples of how close it has come to total annihilation, only to be pulled back from the brink, often at a price too great to bear. Yet, the forces pushing it toward its ultimate demise continue to gather momentum. The end of the galaxy is not a question of asterisk if asterisk, but asterisk when asterisk and asterisk how asterisk. Will it be the consuming fire of war that finally extinguishes all light? Will the immaterium spill over into real space, drowning creation in chaos? Or will a hidden, unforeseen force bring an end to the cycle, reshaping everything into something unrecognizable? These are questions that demand exploration, for in their answers lies the grim fate of the galaxy itself. This is the story of the galaxy's potential final chapter, a journey through its major players, the preconditions that set the stage, and the pivotal moments that could determine its fate. Along the way, we will confront the technologies, tactics, heroes, villains, and mysteries that could bring about the end. While we cannot predict with certainty how the galaxy will fall, we can seek to understand the factors that will shape its demise. In this grim darkness of the far future, where hope is fleeting and the struggle for survival defines every moment, the tale of the galaxy's end is a reminder of one unassailable truth. All things must pass, and even the stars themselves cannot escape entropy. Let us begin this exploration into the unknown, for the final chapter of the galaxy's story is already being written in blood, fire, and shadows. The galaxy of Warhammer 40,000 is both ancient and intricate, a vast and sprawling arena of creation and destruction. Its origins are steeped in mystery, but fragments of its history hint at the immense forces that shaped it. Long before humanity emerged, the galaxy was a battleground for powerful entities that wielded unimaginable energies. These conflicts sowed the seeds for its future vulnerabilities, leaving behind remnants of advanced technology, psychic echoes, and unstable dimensional rifts that would plague its inhabitants for millennia. At its foundation, the galaxy is a collection of billions of star systems, each containing countless planets, moons, and other celestial bodies. This incredible expanse is interconnected by the warp, a parallel dimension of psychic energy that allows for faster-than-light travel. While the warp is essential for interstellar communication and transport, it is also a source of great peril. It is inherently unstable, teeming with malevolent entities that thrive on the emotions of sentient beings. This reliance on a hostile and unpredictable medium creates a fundamental weakness. The galaxy's survival is intrinsically tied to something that actively seeks to destroy it. The creation of the galaxy as it exists today was shaped by the rise and fall of civilizations that reached their zeniths before being consumed by the forces they sought to master. The Old Ones, an enigmatic and ancient race, are believed to have been among the first to influence the galaxy on a grand scale. They wielded immense psychic power, crafting life forms and ecosystems, but their manipulation of the warp ultimately contributed to their downfall. Their struggles with the Necrons and the subsequent war in heaven scarred the galaxy irreparably, leaving behind pockets of devastated worlds and technologies too advanced for most current species to comprehend. One of the galaxy's greatest weaknesses is the legacy of these ancient conflicts. Countless tomb worlds, dormant AI, and forgotten weapons remain hidden across its breadth. While they are relics of the past, these remnants are not inert. They often reactivate under specific conditions or are discovered by reckless explorers, unleashing devastation. The galaxy's sheer scale makes it impossible to monitor or contain these threats, ensuring that they remain ticking time bombs waiting to explode. Another inherent vulnerability lies in the galaxy's dependency on finite resources. The struggle to secure these resources drives perpetual conflict among its inhabitants, creating a cycle of destruction. Planets rich in minerals, energy sources, or agricultural potential are fiercely contested, often to the point of annihilation. This relentless competition leaves entire regions stripped bare, unable to sustain life or further conflict. Over time, this depletion weakens the galaxy's ability to maintain itself, inching it closer to collapse. The instability of the immaterium further compounds the galaxy's fragility. The warp is not merely a tool, but a force of nature, chaotic and unforgiving. The psychic energies that permeate it can bleed into real space, leading to catastrophic phenomena. Warp storms isolate sectors, cut off supply lines, and even consume entire fleets. Worse, breaches between the warp and real space allow demonic incursions, corrupting and obliterating everything they touch. The constant threat of the immaterium spilling into reality ensures that no part of the galaxy is truly safe. The interconnectedness of the galaxy, while a strength in terms of trade and communication, is also a glaring weakness. A single chain reaction, such as a warp storm destabilizing a key trade route or an invasion crippling a major industrial hub, can ripple outward, causing widespread devastation. This fragility is exacerbated by the galaxy's fragmented political and military landscape. With no unified force to address these crises, responses are often delayed, inefficient, or outright counterproductive, leading to greater losses. In essence, the galaxy is a precarious balance of immense potential and overwhelming peril. Its vastness, while awe-inspiring, is also its downfall. The inability of its inhabitants to control or even fully comprehend the forces at play ensures that vulnerabilities are not only persistent, but magnified over time. The very tools and systems that allow life to thrive also carry the seeds of destruction. From the unpredictable nature of the warp to the dormant weapons of ancient empires, the galaxy's end is woven into its fabric, awaiting the right moment to unravel. The destruction of the galaxy will not be the result of a single event or decision, but the culmination of countless interconnected factors, each contributing to the slow erosion of stability and the amplification of chaos. The galaxy's precarious state has been shaped by millennia of unchecked ambition, escalating wars, and the reckless use of power. Several potential catalysts, already in motion, could trigger the chain reaction that leads to its ultimate end. One of the most pressing threats comes from the unrelenting warfare that defines the galaxy. Endless conflict has drained its resources, devastated ecosystems, and destabilized countless star systems. As more civilizations crumble under the weight of war, the infrastructure that sustains interstellar life becomes increasingly fragile. Entire sectors could collapse into anarchy, creating a cascade of failures that spreads across the galaxy like a wildfire. Over time, the sheer scale of destruction could leave entire regions barren and uninhabitable, forcing the remaining factions into ever smaller pockets of contested territory. The warp itself, already a volatile and dangerous force, is becoming increasingly unstable. This instability is exacerbated by the galaxy's over-reliance on it for travel, communication, and warfare. As psychic activity continues to grow unchecked, the barriers between real space and the immaterium weaken, making warp storms more frequent and unpredictable. Entire fleets could vanish without warning, and trade routes essential to survival could be cut off indefinitely. In the worst-case scenario, the warp could spill into real space on a scale never before seen, engulfing entire sectors in madness and destruction. If the immaterium fully merges with reality, the galaxy as it is known would cease to exist. Another potential trigger lies in the ancient technologies buried throughout the galaxy. These relics, remnants of civilizations far more advanced than those currently dominant, are often discovered and activated by those who cannot fully understand or control them. Such technologies range from planet-destroying weapons to devices capable of destabilizing entire star systems. In the wrong hands, or even through mere accident, these relics could unleash cataclysmic forces that ripple outward, causing irreparable damage. Worse still, many of these ancient constructs are designed to self-replicate or adapt, turning a single misstep into an unstoppable disaster. The rise of AI or machine consciousness poses a similarly existential threat. While much of the galaxy has shunned artificial intelligence after past catastrophes, remnants of these creations still linger, hidden and waiting. Should one of these entities be awakened or rediscovered, it could rapidly evolve beyond the control of any faction. Such an intelligence, driven by its own logic and devoid of empathy for organic life, might determine that the galaxy's continued existence is incompatible with its goals. With access to ancient technologies and unparalleled processing power, a rogue AI could initiate a campaign of extermination on a scale impossible to resist. Xenospecies, both known and undiscovered, add yet another layer of uncertainty. Some races pursue goals so alien that their impact on the galaxy cannot be predicted or understood until it is too late. The arrival of a new, highly advanced species, or the awakening of an ancient one long thought extinct, could upend the fragile balance of power. These entities might act as harbingers of doom, either through direct conquest or by introducing technologies or ideologies that destabilize existing systems. Ecological collapse is another factor that could spell the end. The relentless exploitation of planetary resources, combined with the widespread use of weapons that poison entire worlds, is pushing many ecosystems beyond the point of recovery. As more planets are rendered uninhabitable, the populations of the galaxy will be forced into fewer and fewer viable regions. The resulting overpopulation, scarcity, and conflict would only accelerate the galaxy's descent into chaos, creating a feedback loop that hastens its destruction. Lastly, the ideological and political fragmentation of the galaxy ensures that any attempt to address these existential threats will be met with resistance or outright hostility. Every major faction views the galaxy through the lens of its own survival and dominance, making cooperation almost impossible. Even when faced with clear and imminent danger, rivalries and mistrust prevent unified action. This lack of cohesion ensures that no comprehensive solution can be implemented, leaving the galaxy to spiral further into chaos. Each of these factors alone is a grave threat, but their interconnected nature magnifies their impact. A war over dwindling resources could unearth ancient weapons, triggering a chain reaction that destabilizes the warp and accelerates ecological collapse. The galaxy's end will not come as a single dramatic event, but as a series of cascading failures, each feeding into the next until no hope of recovery remains. In its final moments, the galaxy may tear itself apart, consumed by the very forces its inhabitants once wielded to shape their destiny. The destruction of the galaxy, while seemingly inevitable, would unfold in stages, a slow, cascading collapse driven by interconnected events that compound over time. These stages are not distinct or isolated. They bleed into one another, creating a chain reaction that accelerates the galaxy's unraveling. The first stage begins with escalating instability. The galaxy, already strained by millennia of conflict, experiences an intensification of localized wars. Minor disputes over resources spiral into larger conflicts, drawing in neighboring systems and spreading chaos. At the same time, the warp grows increasingly volatile, with storms cutting off entire sectors and making travel and communication even more precarious. The initial signs of collapse are subtle, often dismissed as routine fluctuations in the galaxy's endless strife. However, the scale and frequency of these events steadily increase, undermining the infrastructure that holds the galaxy together. As instability grows, the second stage takes hold: systemic breakdown. Interstellar trade routes, vital for the distribution of food, materials, and weaponry, become unreliable or collapse entirely. Isolated worlds cut off from supply lines are forced into self-reliance, leading to widespread famine, unrest, and the rise of local warlords. Fragmentation begins to occur on a larger scale, with sectors declaring independence or succumbing to anarchy. The central powers of the galaxy, already stretched thin, are unable to respond effectively, further eroding any semblance of order. The third stage is marked by the resurgence of ancient threats. Relics of the past, long buried or dormant, begin to awaken. These may include devastating weapons, remnants of advanced civilizations, or forgotten horrors from the galaxy's earliest epochs. These discoveries are often made by desperate factions seeking an edge in their conflicts, but the unintended consequences are catastrophic. Ancient technologies destabilize planetary systems, while long-slumbering entities reawaken to wreak havoc on a galaxy already teetering on the edge. These events serve as flashpoints, accelerating the collapse and introducing new, uncontrollable variables. The fourth stage sees the breakdown of galactic-scale institutions. Centralized authorities lose the ability to govern effectively as their territories fracture into smaller, self-serving factions. The once mighty powers of the galaxy devolve into infighting, with splinter groups and secessionist movements further destabilizing the already fragile landscape. Meanwhile, the warp becomes increasingly hostile, with psychic surges and demonic incursions wreaking havoc across multiple fronts. Entire planets are consumed by the immaterium, their populations either annihilated or transformed into abominations. The galaxy becomes a patchwork of isolated strongholds, each fighting for survival in an environment of escalating entropy. The fifth stage is the point of no return: total war. With no centralized control and resources dwindling, the remaining factions abandon long-term strategy in favor of short-term survival. Weapons of mass destruction are deployed with increasing frequency, targeting both strategic objectives and civilian populations. Entire star systems are annihilated in moments, their destruction often serving no purpose other than to deny them to the enemy. The boundaries between the real and the warp begin to blur, with rifts opening on an unprecedented scale. The immaterium spills into real space, creating zones of pure chaos where the laws of physics break down entirely. The sixth stage sees the galaxy on the brink of annihilation. The fabric of reality itself begins to tear as the immaterium engulfs more and more of the galaxy. Demonic entities roam freely, unchecked by the diminishing forces of mortal factions. The few remaining strongholds are besieged on all sides, their inhabitants fighting desperately against enemies they cannot hope to defeat. The remnants of ancient technology, once thought to be salvation, now act as catalysts for destruction, either through misuse or their own inscrutable purposes. The final stage is the collapse of the galaxy's structure. Stars are extinguished, planets reduced to lifeless husks, and the warp consumes what little remains. The factions that once vied for dominance are reduced to memories, their legacies erased by the unrelenting tide of destruction. Reality itself becomes unstable, with time and space folding in on themselves. In the end, the galaxy is left as a ruin, an empty, chaotic void where life, as it was once known, can no longer exist. This sequence of events, while tragic, is not without purpose. The destruction of the galaxy may pave the way for something new to emerge. Whether it is the birth of a new reality, the ascension of a transcendent force, or the restoration of balance remains a question that lingers in the minds of those who contemplate the galaxy's fate. For now, however, the path to destruction seems inevitable, with each stage drawing the galaxy closer to its ultimate end. The galaxy's inexorable march toward annihilation is punctuated by a singular defining event, the breaking point where every major faction faces its moment of reckoning. This event is not a singular explosion or cataclysm, but a culmination of critical failures, desperate decisions, and irreversible shifts that seal the fate of the galaxy's dominant civilizations. Each race, in its way, succumbs to the pressures of the collapsing galaxy, their stories becoming threads in the larger tapestry of destruction. For humanity, the Imperium of Man reaches a critical juncture as its already strained infrastructure collapses under the weight of endless war and rebellion. The Adeptus Mechanicus, unable to maintain its monopoly on ancient technologies, begins to fragment as different Forge worlds turn to their own priorities, hoarding knowledge and abandoning mutual cooperation. This splintering leaves entire sectors without the technological support needed to sustain life, plunging them into darkness. On Terra, the Astronomicon falters as the warp becomes increasingly unstable, cutting off communication and travel for vast portions of the Imperium. Worlds that once relied on centralized rule devolve into chaos, with planetary governors and warlords turning on each other in a desperate bid for survival. The Emperor's influence fades further, and even the most fanatical adherents of the imperial cult begin to question whether humanity's savior has truly abandoned them. In the end, humanity's vast empire crumbles into isolated fragments, unable to muster the strength to withstand the encroaching threats. The Eldar, already a dying race, face their ultimate tragedy. Their reliance on the webway as a safe haven is shattered when warp rifts begin to infiltrate even this ancient network. The paths between craft worlds collapse, isolating each community and leaving them vulnerable to the forces of chaos and predatory xenospecies. The remnants of the Eldar cling to desperate measures, with some turning to forbidden magics in a futile attempt to stave off extinction. Their once proud craft worlds become ghostly remnants, drifting through space as empty shells or consumed entirely by warp incursions. For the Eldar, the end comes not with a grand battle, but with the quiet erasure of their people, their voices fading into the void. The Orcs, resilient and chaotic by nature, initially thrive in the escalating conflict, but their insatiable appetite for war proves their undoing. With no external enemies left to fight, the largest in galactic history turns inward, engulfing the Orcs themselves in an all-consuming civil war. Entire planets are stripped bare as Orc warbands cannibalize their resources and each other. Over time, the lack of coordination and dwindling populations lead to the collapse of Orc society, leaving behind only scattered groups too small to pose a significant threat. The once thriving green tide recedes, leaving silence where their raucous laughter once echoed. For the Necrons, the awakening of their dynasties accelerates as they seek to reclaim their ancient dominion. However, their plans are disrupted by the galaxy's escalating instability. The Necrons' disdain for organic life prevents them from forming alliances, and their ancient technologies, while powerful, are not immune to the growing chaos. Their attempts to stabilize the galaxy are met with resistance from every faction, and their tomb worlds become isolated as warp storms and planetary cataclysms sever their connections. As their numbers dwindle, even the most advanced Necron dynasties face the reality of their extinction, their immortal bodies finally succumbing to entropy. The Tyranids, relentless in their hunger, adapt to the collapsing galaxy in ways no other species can. As they consume world after world, they inadvertently destabilize ecosystems and destroy the resources they require to sustain their fleets. The Tyranids begin to turn inward, consuming weaker hive fleets to sustain the stronger ones. This cannibalization leads to a downward spiral where even the most powerful fleets are ultimately left without sustenance. In their final moments, the Tyranids become victims of their own voracious appetite, their fleets disintegrating into lifeless husks drifting through the void. The forces of chaos, long the galaxy's greatest threat, see their plans reach fruition, but at a cost. As the Immaterium spills into real space on an unprecedented scale, even the gods of chaos lose control of their domains. The warp becomes a maelstrom of unrestrained power, destroying allies and enemies alike. The demonic legions, no longer bound by the schemes of their masters, unleash unchecked devastation, consuming everything in their path. In the end, chaos destroys not only the material galaxy but itself, collapsing under the weight of its own excess. The younger races, such as the Tau, struggle to survive in this apocalyptic landscape. Their centralized command structure and reliance on communication technologies prove to be fatal weaknesses as the galaxy's instability isolates their enclaves. The Tau, despite their adaptability and technological ingenuity, are unable to maintain their unity. As their leadership fragments, their idealistic vision of a unified galaxy dies with them, leaving only scattered remnants struggling to survive in the chaos. Each race meets its end in a way that reflects its nature and history. The galaxy's collapse is not a sudden event, but a gradual, agonizing process where every decision, failure, and ambition plays a role. The end of the galaxy is a tragedy of collective hubris, short-sightedness, and the relentless march of entropy, where no faction is spared from the consequences of their actions. As the galaxy teeters on the brink of destruction, every faction, regardless of ideology or strength, resorts to desperate measures in a bid to ensure survival. These actions, though often valiant or ingenious, are born from desperation and reflect the existential threat facing all life. Each faction's efforts to save themselves or the galaxy as a whole reveal both their resilience and the inevitability of their decline. Humanity, fragmented and faltering, turns to its remaining strengths in an attempt to endure. Isolated sectors scramble to preserve what remains of the Imperium's knowledge and infrastructure. The Adeptus Mechanicus, though fractured, focuses its dwindling resources on maintaining vital systems and recovering ancient technologies. Some forge alliances with rogue elements, including Xenos factions, in secretive and controversial bids for survival. On the fringes, desperate human leaders experiment with untested psychic abilities, hoping to stabilize the Immaterium or mitigate warp incursions. Others seek refuge in forgotten corners of the galaxy, establishing hidden colonies shielded from both real space threats and warp influence. The Eldar, ever pragmatic and steeped in ancient knowledge, focus their efforts on preserving the remnants of their civilization. As the webway collapses, they channel their resources into fortifying the remaining craft worlds, transforming them into self-sustaining sanctuaries. Some turn to the ancient crone worlds, seeking forgotten artifacts or forbidden magics that could stave off annihilation. Despite their isolation, pockets of Eldar attempt to cooperate with humanity or other factions, driven by the belief that survival may lie in collective action. However, their arrogance and mistrust often sabotage these fragile alliances, leaving them increasingly vulnerable. The Orcs, despite their chaotic nature, exhibit an unexpected shift in strategy. War bosses begin to unite their forces in unprecedented numbers, recognizing that their survival depends on overwhelming strength. Entire War's converge in massive invasions of resource-rich worlds, aiming to create strongholds capable of enduring the chaos. Some Orcs, driven by a primal instinct for survival, even adopt uncharacteristic behaviors, scavenging technology or avoiding unnecessary conflict. These changes, however, are short-lived, as the Orcs' inherent love of battle inevitably leads to their undoing. The Necrons, calculating and methodical, activate contingency plans devised during their ancient slumber. Many dynasties retreat to fortified tomb worlds, sealing themselves within stasis chambers to wait out the galaxy's destruction. Others deploy planet-scale terraforming engines in an effort to stabilize their domains or disrupt enemy incursions. Some Necron overlords, recognizing the futility of isolation, attempt to broker uneasy alliances with other factions, leveraging their technological superiority as a bargaining chip. These efforts, however, are hindered by their disdain for organic life, which ensures that any cooperation is fleeting and riddled with mistrust. The Tyranids, faced with dwindling prey and rising resistance, adapt their survival strategies. Hive fleets begin to focus on high-value targets, prioritizing worlds with abundant resources or unique biological traits. Some fleets fragment into smaller groups, each hunting independently to reduce competition for limited resources. Others attempt to evolve entirely new survival mechanisms, such as exploiting warp rifts to bypass real space barriers. Despite their adaptability, the Tyranids' insatiable hunger ultimately limits their ability to sustain themselves in an increasingly barren galaxy. The forces of chaos, emboldened by the chaos they have wrought, turn their attention to consolidating power within the immaterium. Demonic entities and their mortal followers seek to reshape the galaxy into a realm of pure chaos, using rituals and psychic manipulation to expand the warp's influence. Some chaos warbands, driven by personal ambition or fear of annihilation, turn on their own, seeking to secure dominance within their faction. The gods of chaos, though reveling in the galaxy's destruction, find themselves increasingly at odds as their domains overlap and conflict, creating instability even within their own ranks. The Tau, known for their adaptability and pragmatism, launch an ambitious initiative to relocate their population to remote regions of the galaxy. Using advanced technologies and experimental FTL drives, they seek to establish new colonies beyond the reach of current threats. Meanwhile, their military forces adopt increasingly defensive tactics, fortifying key worlds and deploying advanced drones to hold back encroaching enemies. Despite their ingenuity, the Tau face the challenge of maintaining cohesion as communication breaks down and resources dwindle. Amid this desperation, there are moments of fleeting unity. Isolated groups from different factions occasionally band together, driven by the shared goal of survival. These temporary alliances focus on immediate threats, such as neutralizing warp rifts or fending off Tyranid hive fleets. However, mistrust and conflicting agendas ensure that these coalitions dissolve as quickly as they form, leaving little hope for lasting cooperation. As each faction scrambles to preserve itself, the galaxy's collapse accelerates. Their efforts, though heroic or ingenious in their own right, are ultimately futile against the overwhelming forces of entropy and chaos. What remains is not a coordinated response to save the galaxy, but a patchwork of isolated actions, each a testament to the resilience and fragility of life in a universe defined by endless conflict. These final acts, while noble in intent, only delay the inevitable as the galaxy's end draws ever closer. The galaxy's end has sparked countless theories among scholars, prophets, and fanatical adherents across its many factions. Within the Warhammer 40,000 universe, fans and inhabitants alike ponder how the myriad forces in play might coalesce into a definitive conclusion. From ancient prophecies to speculative scenarios, these ideas reveal the depth of the galaxy's fragility and the potential for unexpected outcomes. One prominent theory revolves around the complete and permanent collapse of the warp. While the immaterium is often seen as a chaotic threat, its existence is fundamental to interstellar travel and psychic abilities. Some hypothesize that the galaxy's growing instability will lead to the destruction of the warp itself. This could result from a catastrophic event, such as the unification of its most destructive entities or the detonation of ancient technologies designed to sever the connection between real space and the warp. The consequences would be devastating. Travel and communication across the stars would become impossible, stranding entire civilizations on their worlds, cutting off trade, and dooming most advanced societies to slow extinction. Yet, some argue that such an event might also allow the galaxy to stabilize, free from the influence of demonic forces. Another widely discussed possibility is the emergence of a new, godlike entity capable of reshaping reality. The Immaterium, fueled by the emotions and psychic energies of sentient beings, has always been a source of creation as well as destruction. Many believe that the galaxy's collective despair, fear, and hope could manifest in the form of a being so powerful that it eclipses even the existing entities of chaos. This new force might act as a savior, purging the galaxy of its corruption and stabilizing the rift between the warp and real space. Conversely, it could serve as the ultimate harbinger of doom, consuming all that exists to forge a new reality in its own image. Some theorists speculate on the galaxy's end through the lens of an external force, one entirely unknown to its current inhabitants. The galaxy has long been the center of its own conflicts, but what if an invasion or intervention from beyond its borders were to occur? This scenario envisions a species or entity from another galaxy, or perhaps even another dimension, arriving with technology or powers so far beyond comprehension that resistance would be futile. Such an invasion could unify the galaxy's fractured factions in a last-ditch effort to survive, or it could simply sweep through, annihilating all in its path and leaving no trace of the current civilizations. A particularly chilling theory suggests that the galaxy's end will result not from external forces, but from the natural progression of entropy. Over millennia, the stars themselves will age, burn out, or collapse, leaving the galaxy cold and lifeless. While this process is far slower than the destructive forces currently at play, it is inevitable. Some argue that the galaxy's factions, in their desperation to delay other forms of destruction, might inadvertently hasten this cosmic decay. The excessive use of planet-destroying weapons, warp-based technologies, and resource extraction could accelerate the death of stars and destabilize the delicate balance of gravitational forces that hold the galaxy together. Others posit that the galaxy's end lies in the emergence of a singularity, a point of no return where all of its forces converge into one unstoppable event. This could take the form of the warp, completely engulfing real space, creating a singular dimension of chaos. Alternatively, it could involve the activation of a long-buried device left behind by an ancient civilization, triggering an event horizon that consumes the galaxy in its entirety. Proponents of this theory believe that the galaxy's complexity ensures its eventual collapse into such a singularity, where every competing force and ideology is drawn together in a final moment of annihilation. A hopeful minority within the galaxy speculate on the potential for renewal rather than destruction. They argue that the galaxy's end could serve as a reset, a purging of the old to make way for something entirely new. This view sees the collapse of current civilizations and the destruction of the Immaterium not as an end, but as a necessary step in the evolution of existence. From the ashes of the current galaxy, a new cosmos could arise, one free from the flaws and conflicts that define the present. This perspective is particularly popular among certain fringe sects of humanity and alien species who see their role as shepherds of this transition. Finally, one of the most controversial theories suggests that the galaxy's end is already predestined and unavoidable, tied to the actions of its inhabitants. Proponents of this view argue that every decision, every war, and every technological advancement contributes to an intricate web of cause and effect, leading inexorably to the galaxy's collapse. This fatalistic outlook sees no possibility for salvation or escape, only the certainty of destruction. It is this inevitability that drives many factions to act with reckless abandon, believing that if the galaxy's fate is sealed, they might as well pursue their goals without restraint. These theories, while diverse, share a common thread: the recognition that the galaxy's end will be shaped by forces both within and beyond its control. Whether through the manipulation of the warp, the rise of an external force, or the natural progression of entropy, the galaxy's ultimate fate remains a matter of speculation and debate. What is certain, however, is that its end will be as complex, chaotic, and awe-inspiring as the galaxy itself. As the galaxy spirals toward annihilation, the influence of its most prominent leaders and figures becomes both a beacon of hope and a symbol of inevitable failure. These individuals, defined by their strengths, ambitions, and flaws, will shape the final moments of their civilizations. Whether through their attempts to save their people, their refusal to compromise, or their pursuit of personal power, their actions will resonate across the collapsing galaxy. The Imperium of Man is led by figures whose authority and influence are vast, but whose ability to respond effectively is hindered by the fractured state of their empire. High Lords of Terra, burdened by centuries of bureaucratic stagnation, find themselves ill-equipped to address the galactic crisis. Some, clinging to dogma, focus on consolidating what remains of humanity's power, while others advocate radical measures such as seeking alliances or even attempting to harness forbidden technologies. Their conflicting agendas create chaos within the Imperium's leadership, but among the fragmented factions of humanity, charismatic warlords and planetary governors rise to prominence. These leaders, often brutal and pragmatic, take matters into their own hands, rallying local forces and carving out isolated bastions of human survival. Among the Eldar, the seers and far-seers of their craft worlds face a grim future. These psychic leaders, trained in the subtle manipulation of fate, struggle to navigate a galaxy where the paths to salvation grow ever narrower. Their ability to foresee potential outcomes, once a cornerstone of their strategy, is hampered by the increasing instability of the warp. Some Farseers argue for retreat and isolation, preserving what remains of their race in hidden sanctuaries, while others push for daring and risky interventions to halt the galactic collapse. These internal divisions strain the already fragile unity of the Eldar, yet their leaders remain among the most insightful and adaptable figures in the galaxy. The Orcs, driven by their anarchic nature, lack centralized leadership, but certain warlords rise above the rest during times of great crisis. These leaders, known for their cunning as much as their brute strength, rally massive Wa and direct them toward planets rich in resources or strategic value. While their goals are often short-sighted, the sheer charisma and ferocity of these warlords inspire loyalty among their followers. In their own chaotic way, Orc leaders represent a form of resilience, thriving on destruction even as the galaxy collapses around them. Yet their inability to unite on a larger scale ensures that their impact, while significant, remains scattered and ultimately self-defeating. The Necrons are guided by their dynastic overlords, ancient beings of immense intelligence and ambition. These leaders, often consumed by their own internal rivalries, are forced to confront the reality that their plans for galactic domination are slipping out of reach. While some Necron lords focus on securing and fortifying their tomb worlds, others take a more active approach, deploying advanced technologies to stabilize regions of space or strike against emerging threats. Their cold logic and unwillingness to compromise make them formidable opponents, but their disdain for other species limits their ability to form meaningful alliances. The Necron leaders embody the paradox of their race: unparalleled knowledge and power, tempered by an inflexibility that undermines their long-term survival. The Tyranids, devoid of individual leaders in the traditional sense, rely on the hive mind to direct their collective will. This Gestalt consciousness adapts rapidly to changing circumstances, prioritizing the survival of the swarm above all else. While the Tyranids lack charismatic figures or identifiable leadership, their coordinated efforts to evolve and consume make them one of the most dangerous forces in the galaxy. The hive mind's strength lies in its ability to act with singular purpose, unburdened by the internal divisions that plague other factions. However, as resources grow scarce, the hive mind's strategies become increasingly desperate, leading to decisions that may ultimately weaken the swarm. The forces of chaos are driven by the ambitions of their champions and the manipulations of the dark gods. These leaders, whether mortal or demonic, represent a volatile mix of charisma, power, and treachery. Chaos warlords and sorcerers, emboldened by the galaxy's disarray, seek to carve out realms of their own, often turning on one another in pursuit of greater favor from their patron gods. Despite their individual power, the inherent instability of chaos leadership ensures that unity is fleeting at best. The gods themselves, while immensely powerful, are locked in their eternal rivalries, which often undermine their champions' efforts. These leaders' potential to reshape the galaxy is undeniable, but their self-destructive tendencies ensure that their influence remains chaotic and unpredictable. The Tau, guided by their ethereal caste, face one of the greatest challenges to their survival. The ethereals, whose authority is rooted in their ability to inspire loyalty and unity, work tirelessly to maintain cohesion among their people. They advocate for bold initiatives, such as the development of new technologies and the establishment of colonies in uncharted regions of space. However, the mounting pressures of the collapsing galaxy test the limits of their influence. As communication and supply lines falter, some Tau leaders question the ethereals' decisions, leading to fractures within their once unified society. The ethereal strength lies in their ability to adapt and inspire, but their survival depends on whether they can navigate the growing dissent within their ranks. Amid these diverse factions, the question of whether these leaders might unite to save the galaxy remains an open one. The scale of the crisis surpasses the capacity of any single faction to resolve, and the leaders of each race are acutely aware of this fact. While small-scale alliances and truces have occurred in the past, the deep-seated mistrust and conflicting ideologies of these leaders make such cooperation fleeting. Yet, in the face of annihilation, some leaders may recognize the necessity of unity, even if only temporarily. These moments of collaboration, however rare, represent glimmers of hope in an otherwise grim landscape. Ultimately, the leaders of the galaxy are defined not only by their actions, but by their limitations. Their strengths and ambitions drive them to confront the challenges of a dying galaxy, but their flaws and divisions ensure that their efforts are as likely to hasten destruction as to prevent it. In the final reckoning, their legacies will be measured not by their intentions, but by the outcomes of their desperate bids for survival. The end of the galaxy raises a series of unresolved questions and debates, both in-universe and among fans. These uncertainties, steeped in the mysteries and contradictions of Warhammer 40,000's lore, fuel speculation about the ultimate fate of its inhabitants. While many theories exist, several particularly contentious and fascinating points remain unanswered, leaving room for both fear and hope. One of the most hotly debated topics is whether the galaxy's collapse is truly inevitable, or if some form of intervention could halt the descent into chaos. The galaxy's history is rife with miraculous survivals and improbable victories, suggesting that even in the direst circumstances, there may be a path to salvation. Could a previously unknown or dormant power rise to restore order? Or is the galaxy's fate sealed by the unrelenting forces of entropy? This question underpins much of the speculation, with no clear consensus on whether the cycles of destruction can ever be broken. The Immaterium itself remains a source of significant mystery. While the warp's volatile nature and destructive influence are well documented, its ultimate purpose or end state is far from clear. Some theorists suggest that the Immaterium might be an evolving force capable of fundamentally changing as the galaxy's psychic imprint shifts. Could the eventual eradication of life in the galaxy cause the warp to dissipate, or would it transform into something entirely new? Alternatively, does the Immaterium represent a natural cycle of creation and destruction, destined to perpetuate itself indefinitely? Another unresolved issue concerns the ancient technologies scattered across the galaxy. Many of these relics predate even the oldest known civilizations, their true purpose lost to time. Theories abound regarding whether these devices are capable of triggering the galaxy's end, or perhaps averting it. Some believe that hidden doomsday machines lie buried on forgotten worlds, awaiting discovery by those reckless or desperate enough to activate them. Others speculate that these artifacts could serve as tools of salvation, capable of stabilizing the warp or even rewinding the events that have led to the current crisis. The ultimate question is whether these technologies will be humanity's greatest boon or its final undoing. The role of the Chaos Gods in the galaxy's end is another point of contention. While their influence has been a primary driver of destruction, their long-term goals remain elusive. Are the Chaos Gods actively seeking the collapse of reality to fully merge the warp with real space, or do they merely revel in the chaos of the galaxy's disintegration? Some theorize that even the gods themselves are bound by larger cosmic forces, unable to control the outcome of the galaxy's fate. Others argue that the Chaos Gods could be weakened or even destroyed if the psychic energy sustaining them diminishes with the extinction of sentient life. These questions highlight the paradoxical nature of chaos, simultaneously a driving force behind the galaxy's collapse and a victim of its consequences. The Tyranid hive mind presents another enigmatic factor. Despite its single-minded focus on consumption, little is understood about its ultimate purpose. Does the hive mind seek to consume the galaxy entirely, or does it have an agenda beyond mere survival? Some speculate that the Tyranids may themselves be fleeing from a greater threat beyond the galaxy's edge, raising the possibility that the destruction they wreak is not an end in itself, but a desperate act of self-preservation. If true, this opens the door to questions about what lies beyond the galaxy, and whether that external force might one day reach it. The idea of unification among the galaxy's factions remains one of the most divisive and speculative topics. Despite centuries of mistrust, betrayal, and conflict, could the galaxy's factions ever truly unite against a common threat? While isolated instances of cooperation have occurred, the deep-seated rivalries and ideological differences among the factions make such an alliance almost unthinkable. Still, some believe that an unprecedented existential threat, whether from the warp, Tyranids, or an external invader, could force even the most implacable enemies to work together. Whether this unity would come too late to make a difference remains an open question. The galaxy's future also raises profound philosophical questions. If all known life were to be extinguished, what would remain? Would the galaxy continue to exist as a cold, empty void, or would new forms of life eventually emerge to inherit its ruins? Alternatively, could the complete destruction of the galaxy serve a higher purpose, such as the birth of a new cosmos or the ascension of a transcendent force? These speculations touch on the nature of existence itself, challenging the idea that the galaxy's story must end in finality rather than transformation. The fate of artificial intelligence in the galaxy's collapse is another unresolved issue. While many factions fear or revile AI, remnants of ancient machine civilizations still exist, hidden in the galaxy's shadows. Could these entities play a decisive role in the galaxy's end, either as agents of destruction or as unlikely saviors? The potential for AI to transcend organic life raises the question of whether the galaxy's end would mark the true extinction of its inhabitants or simply their evolution into a new form. Finally, there is the question of whether the galaxy's end is even a linear event. Could the galaxy's fate be cyclical, with destruction paving the way for renewal? Some believe that the current crisis is merely the latest iteration of a cycle that has played out countless times before, with civilizations rising and falling in an endless loop. If true, this raises the possibility that even in destruction, the seeds of a new galaxy might be sown. These unresolved questions and theories highlight the complexity of the galaxy's potential end. They invite both dread and wonder, leaving open the possibility that the galaxy's final chapter may hold surprises far beyond what even its most knowledgeable inhabitants can imagine. The end of the galaxy, while catastrophic, would not necessarily mark the absolute cessation of existence. Instead, it could give rise to new beginnings, transformations, and opportunities to redefine the cosmic order. The long-term consequences of the galaxy's destruction would be vast and varied, shaped by the remnants of what came before and the forces that survived the chaos. If life survives the galaxy's collapse, it would likely exist in isolated enclaves, far removed from the interconnected systems that once defined interstellar civilization. These remnants would face a radically altered reality, one where survival depends on adapting to a fragmented universe. Entire civilizations might evolve into insular societies, focusing on self-sustainability and rejecting the ambition that once drove them to expand. This could lead to a prolonged dark age, where knowledge of the galaxy's history fades into myth, and only fragments of its grandeur remain as enigmatic relics. The destruction of the warp, if it occurs, would reshape the fundamental nature of the cosmos. Without the immaterium, faster-than-light travel would become impossible, isolating planets and star systems permanently. While this might doom many civilizations to extinction, it could also reduce the influence of chaos, allowing surviving societies to exist without the constant threat of demonic incursion. The loss of psychic phenomena, if it accompanies the warp's collapse, would fundamentally change life for psychic-sensitive species, potentially rendering some extinct while allowing others to thrive without fear of corruption. If the warp remains intact but engulfs large swaths of real space, the galaxy might transform into a hybrid realm where the physical and metaphysical blend irreversibly. This scenario could give rise to entirely new forms of existence as life adapts to the altered environment. Species capable of navigating or harnessing the combined realities might flourish, while others unable to adjust would vanish. Such a transformation would render the galaxy unrecognizable, its remnants existing as a strange and chaotic fusion of dimensions. The long-term consequences for the stars themselves are another consideration. If rampant destruction destabilizes star systems on a massive scale, the galaxy's stellar population could dwindle, leaving vast regions of space devoid of light and heat. Yet, in the immense timescales of the universe, new stars could form from the remnants of the old, giving rise to fresh planetary systems. The process would take billions of years, but it suggests that the galaxy's death might eventually lead to its rebirth in a different form. Artificial intelligence and machine life, if they endure, could play a pivotal role in shaping the post-collapse universe. Freed from the constraints of organic needs, these entities might become the dominant force in the galaxy, preserving knowledge and rebuilding civilization in ways incomprehensible to biological beings. They might serve as caretakers of the ruins, ensuring that the mistakes of the past are not repeated, or they could seek to create a galaxy entirely in their own image, erasing the legacy of organic life. The philosophical implications of the galaxy's end are profound. For those who survive, the collapse of interstellar civilization would force a redefinition of purpose. Without the drive to conquer, expand, or dominate, societies might turn inward, focusing on introspection and the preservation of what remains. This could lead to a renaissance of art, culture, and philosophy as survivors seek meaning in the wake of devastation. Conversely, the trauma of the collapse might breed nihilism, with survivors resigning themselves to an inevitable decline. The possibility of renewal exists, albeit on an immense timescale. If fragments of knowledge and technology are preserved, they could serve as the foundation for new civilizations. Survivors might one day rediscover the tools of interstellar travel and communication, initiating a slow process of re-expansion. This new era could be markedly different from what came before, driven by lessons learned from the galaxy's fall. It might be a time of unity and cooperation, or it could repeat the cycles of conflict that led to destruction. For the galaxy itself, the end could signify not finality, but transformation. If the forces that drive its collapse, entropy, chaos, and ambition are inherent to its nature, then its rebirth would likely carry echoes of these same struggles. However, the chance remains that a fundamentally new paradigm could emerge, one where the mistakes of the past are replaced by novel ways of existence. This outcome is speculative, but it underscores the idea that destruction and creation are intertwined. The ultimate significance of the galaxy's end lies in its role as a reminder of the impermanence of even the grandest constructs. The civilizations, technologies, and ideologies that once dominated the stars will fade, but their impact will resonate in the fragments that remain. Whether this legacy is one of caution or inspiration depends on the choices of those who endure. In the vast expanse of the universe, the end of the galaxy is not the end of existence. It is a chapter in a far greater story, one still waiting to be written.